Alright, on today's lesson on writing equations of lines, we have two ways that we can write the equation of a line. You can write it in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, and I know y'all have seen that in Algebra 1. The m is for slope, the b is for your y-intercept. And then we also have point-slope form. And point-slope form you may not be familiar with, but it's actually the easiest way to write the equation of a line. All you need is a point and a slope, and you don't have to do any work hardly with it, okay? So, for example, if I told you the slope of a line was 2/3 and it goes to the point negative 2, 5, then negative 2, 5 is your x1 and your y1, and you just go back and plug in. So then that's going to give you y minus 5 equals 2/3, and then x minus a negative 2, so really plus 2, okay? And that's all you do. That right there is your equation of a line in point-slope form, okay? Here's another example. What if I gave you an equation and I wanted you to tell me the slope and the point from it, okay? So looking at this equation, your slope is negative 1/2, and then it goes to the point. All right, so I know I've got to look at my 4 and my 3. Now, I got to figure out which one is my x value, which one's my y value, and then I have to decide if I'm going to use a positive or a negative, okay? So the 4 is going with my x, so that is my x value. Now, it says x minus 4. If you look back up here into your equation does say y minus y minus y1 and x minus x1. So that means your x1 was a 4, a positive 4. And then when you look at your 3, that actually should be a negative 3. So, hang on. So on that one, when you write your point, you got to change your signs. Okay, the slope stays the same, but the point, you need to change your signs on it and make it a positive 4 and a negative 3. Okay? Alright. So, this one, write the equation in point-slope form and in slope-intercept form. So for point-slope form, we just take y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 and plug in. Our point is 2, 8, so that's x1, y1, and our slope is 3, so that gives you y minus 8 equals 3 times x minus 2. So that's your point-slope form of your line. Okay, that's pretty simple. Now to get your slope-intercept form, we're going to take what we wrote down for our point-slope form and basically work it out until you get into the right form of y equals mx plus b. Okay, just kind of finagle it around, I say. So distribute the 3 first. So we get 3x minus 6. And then your next step is just to add 8. And so that gives me y equals 3x plus 2. And so that is my slope-intercept form. So again, to get your slope-intercept form, you start with your point slope, and then you just finagle it around. You're going to distribute the 3, and then add the 8. That's all you do, okay? 2 steps from your point slope get you to slope-intercept. All right. Now, the next one, same thing. They're giving us a point, and they're giving us a slope. So I'm going to write it in point-slope form first. So y minus 3 equals negative 2/3 times x plus 1, because it's minus a negative, so that's plus 1. And then to get it in slope-intercept form, you need to distribute your fraction first, your slope. So negative 2/3 times x and negative 2/3. Okay, because negative 2/3 times x is negative 2/3 x, and then negative 2/3 times 1 is negative 2/3. And then your next step, you're going to add 3 to both sides. So add 3. Alright, so negative 2/3 plus 3. Make that 3 over 1, and then change it so that your denominator is the same. So if your denominator was a 1 and you're changing it to a 3, you're basically multiplying by 3, so multiply the top by 3. So 3 times 3 gives me 9. And then negative 2 plus 9 is 7, and the bottom stays a 3. So really we have y equals negative 2/3 x plus 7/3, and that is your slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept and point-slope. Alright, so here again, same kind of problems. We've got to find the point-slope and the slope-intercept form. But on this one, I'm giving you 2 points. So we still got to find our slope first. Alright, because a while ago I gave you a point and a slope. Well, now you don't know the slope, so you're going to use our slope formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And plug in. Find the slope. It's negative 1/2. And you can use either one of the points, actually, to write your equation now. If you use the first one, you should get y minus 5 equals negative 1/2 x minus 4. If you use the second one, it's going to be y minus 3 equals negative 1/2 times x minus 8. Now, those are two very different looking answers, but they're both correct. You can give me either one of them and it's correct, okay? Now, the next step is to change that to slope-intercept. So to change that to slope-intercept, you're going to have to distribute your slope and then bring your one number over. So there's two steps: distribute and then bring the number over. You can do it with either one of them. I'll do the first one first. So distribute the negative 1/2 gives me negative 1/2 x. And then negative 1/2 times a negative 4, that's really a positive 2. So that's where I got the plus 2 from. And then your next step is just to add 5 to both sides. And so that gives me y equals negative 1/2 x plus 7. And that is my slope-intercept form. And I could stop right there. I only got to do one way of writing it in point slope and then get your slope-intercept. But in case you use the other one, I'll show you that it actually works out to be the same answer. So distribute the negative 1/2. So negative 1/2 x, and then negative 1/2 times negative 8 is a positive 4. And then add 3 to both sides. So you still get y equals negative 1/2 x, and then 4 plus 3 gives me the 7. So you can see they're actually the same answer. So for point slope, you can get different answers. But slope-intercept, there's only going to be one correct answer on these. Okay? All right, on that next one, again, you got to find slope first. And it ends up being negative 1/2. And then write the equation. So y minus 4 equals negative 1/2 x minus the negative 2, so plus 2. Or if you use the other point, you can still write it like that. Y minus 3 equals negative 1/2 x minus 0. And then once you work it out, distribute the negative 1/2. But distributing the negative 1/2, that gives me negative 1/2 x, and then negative 1/2 times 0. Well, that doesn't even matter. I'm not going to write plus 0 or minus 0. And then you're going to add 3 to both sides. So my answer is y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3. Okay? On the third problem here, they tell you an x-intercept of 3 and a y-intercept of negative 2. Well, x-intercept means that's where it crosses your x-axis. So if you look at an x-axis and a y-axis, x-intercept of 3 is going to be crossing my x-axis at 3. And then the y-axis, or y-intercept of negative 2 is going to be crossing my y-axis at negative 2. So they're two separate points. It's not one point. It's not 3, negative 2, okay? It's the point at the x-axis of 3, and then there's a point on the y-axis at negative 2. So that point at x-intercept of 3 would be written as 3, 0, and then the y-intercept of negative 2 would be written as 0, negative 2. Find your slope. And so you get 2/3. So then, again, go back and use either one of your points to write your equation. You could use either one. And then, if you're going to write your slope-intercept form, because that's our next step, either answer there would be your point slope. So for slope-intercept, y equals mx plus b. And m is your slope, and b is your y-intercept. But I actually know my y-intercept. My y-intercept is negative 2. So I can just write that in there. 2/3 is from my slope, and my y-intercept was a negative 2.